All right, what is up, Nation? Noah here, back again. We're going to be discussing some WWE Survivor Series that was, of course, on Saturday night, and it's kind of going to be half my thoughts on Survivor Series and half where I see a lot of storylines heading, where I'd like to see them head into the end of the year, the new year. What did they say at Survivor Series? I believe we have 9 weeks from last night or from Saturday night until the Royal Rumble. So we're gonna be finishing out the year strong. I would love, or I would hope to see from the WWE, and I cannot wait. Royal Rumble, my favorite match of the year. And most exciting show of the year for me. I'm really pumped up for the Royal Rumble, especially since that'll be Triple H's first Royal Rumble, and there's been tons of rumors going around, not tons, but just over the last couple of months. Triple H considering bringing back a 40-man Rumble, which I would love to see. Just not every year, but just for the first time since 2011, they only did it once. I think it's a great idea, and especially with the talent pool that Triple H is assembling, plus any returns or surprises that may be withheld until the Royal Rumble. I think it would be a great year to do a 40-man Royal Rumble. I don't necessarily think you need to do a 40-woman Royal Rumble just because might be spreading yourself a little thin there. But knowing WWE, if they do it for the men, they got to do it for the women too. So I mean, I wouldn't be complaining. I'll take it. So I'm pumped up for the Rumble, man. But let's talk about Survivor Series, and then we'll just, like I said, branch off into some topics regarding storylines and whatnot into the new year. For WWE. But of course, we kicked off Survivor Series War Games with the Women's War Games matchup, which of course was Team Bianca Belair defeating Team Bayley. You had Bianca Belair, Alexa Bliss, Asuka, Mia Yim, and of course, the surprise, fifth woman, as we saw on SmackDown, ended up being Becky Lynch. And then of course, Bayley had Bayley, Dakota Kai, Io Sky, Nikki Cross, and Rhea Ripley. Great matchup here. Honestly, and probably going to discuss more in depth with the men's War Games matchup, but really enjoyed both War Games matchups. I thought they were a ton of fun, especially the men's one, obviously, just because there's the storytelling in it and just some of the brutality was just awesome. But the women's one was very good as well. I enjoyed it, especially some of the closing moments with, I really liked Bianca's KOD to Bayley into the cage. Some moves like that sometimes can come off, a little awkward because there's not a lot of space and you can't really, feel or see, hear the impact on moves like that. But Bayley's knees just crushing against the cage was a nice little sight and sound, if you will. So it was a nice spot there. And then Becky Lynch doing the leg drop off the ladder to Dakota Kai and Io Sky through the table for the win. I thought it was a nice spot as well. And I want to say I was surprised by Team Bianca winning, especially with the addition of Becky Lynch. But I did picked, I think, both wrong teams in my prediction video. I did pick Team Bayley, and I'm very interested to see, where a lot of things go here. Bayley, this, finally, I guess you could say, kind of wraps up her feud with Bianca Belair. I would expect more Becky Lynch and Bayley stuff, so I think them having a one-on-one non-championship feud going into the new year, and then both of them participating in the Women's Royal Rumble matchup would be the way to go there. Then you have Dakota Kai and Io Sky, which they are the women's tag team champions. They need some challengers. They can't just face Alexa and Asuka, a bunch. And that's not really the best spot for Alexa Bliss anyway. But I got one team in mind. I'm gonna pull up WWE.com as I'm talking about it here. But I don't know where Candice LeRae has been. I don't know if she has a shoe injury. I'll be perfectly honest. I don't have my ear to the ground like that too much these days. But I'm pretty sure she's been out with some kind of injury. But when she is ready to go, obviously she was written in the storyline with Dakota Kai, Io Sky, and we'll just damage control in general. So I think definitely Candice LeRae, and then bringing up Indy Hartwell from NXT to reunite the way, just as baby faces this time to challenge Dakota Kai and Io Sky, is one of your best case scenarios for the women's tag team titles right now. But when I'm looking at the WWE main roster here, I'm really not, nobody's really jumping out, and that's kind of, the problem with the women's tag team championships. I don't mind that they're there, but there's just never been a tag team division for the women. It's always just been thrown together teams. There's the occasional, pairing that actually feels like a team, which, does come around, I don't want to say often, but has come around, in the women's division, but there's just not that many teams. Raquel Rodriguez, on one hand, she's had like 3 tag team partners. I mean, she's teamed up with Shotzi, she's teamed up with Aliyah, so, there's not really credible teams there. The only other, team that, if they come back would be Naomi and Sasha Banks, which obviously would be huge. Hell, Naomi and Sasha Banks versus Dakota Kai and Io Sky for the women's tag titles could be a potential WrestleMania match, realistically, and Sasha and Naomi can get back the titles that they never lost, that they won last year at WrestleMania. That's a little story to tell there. But besides that, I mean, you really don't have much of a tag team women's division. So I don't know what's going to be next for Dakota Kai and Io Sky. That to me is one of the interesting things. I guess in a good way, just because of curiosity. Leading into the future on Monday Night Raw and stuff like that. And as for Bianca Belair and who's going to be challenging her next, I mean, I believe she said it in the press conference. I didn't watch it, but I saw some people talking about it on Twitter. I believe she brought up Charlotte Flair, who's been out with I think an injury, or the point is she's been out since she lost the SmackDown Women's title to Ronda Rousey earlier this year. But Bianca Belair versus Charlotte, if that happens, it's going to be a WrestleMania. I personally would rather that not be the case. I think Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley is the way to go for WrestleMania. Just is the better match. Rhea Ripley's absolutely earned that spot this year. I just think it'd be a nice refresher as well to not see Charlotte just forced into a championship match because it's WrestleMania. If Charlotte's going to come back eventually, she's going to be involved in something important, quote unquote, on the main roster. But we don't have to force her in to a women's championship match just because it's WrestleMania season. And I don't think anybody wants to see Charlotte or Becky Lynch for that matter if she faces Ronda at WrestleMania. Neither of those women don't really sound like the most appealing winners to be winning the women's Royal Rumble match in January, especially because they've both won it. And repeat winners are it's not the worst thing in the world for the Royal Rumble. It has happened plenty of times, but it's just not my favorite thing. And then on the other hand, it's Becky and Charlotte. They've been at the top so many times over the last few years, and with Triple H, coming in for his first Royal Rumble, in January, I think it's very important to leave the fans with a good taste in their mouth, especially after the atrocious Royal Rumble, one of, if not the worst ever, between both the women's and the men's this year, 2022. Horrendous Royal Rumble matches, not just the winners, but just the matches themselves were atrocious to watch. So I think it's very important Triple H makes a statement at the Royal Rumble, and that statement, in my opinion, should be Rhea Ripley winning the Royal Rumble matchup in January and facing Bianca Belair and dethroning Bianca Belair for the Raw Women's Championship at WrestleMania. And maybe, not that I would want to see it. I prefer Bianca versus Rhea one-on-one, but if they were so obsessed with trying to get Charlotte in the title match, then make it a triple threat match, and maybe Rhea can still walk out the championship, or as the champion, But I'd rather just see Charlotte and something else, man. You could spread out the women's, talent, especially if, and I think this is honestly a pro to a lot of some of these bigger names who might usually be forced into another matchup that they really shouldn't be, or potentially left off the card at WrestleMania. If they do, put the axe officially to Money in the Bank as the pay-per-view, which has been, discussed for a while, and bring the Money in the Bank matches to WrestleMania, have the women's match on one night and the men's match on the next night, well, that's a perfect opportunity for then, hey, we'll just throw Charlotte in the women's Money in the Bank ladder match, or whatever. But that's, a possibility, there, and can help get more of the bigger names, if you will, in the women's division on the card, and spread out that talent and give, Rhea Ripley a nice spot against Bianca Belair. And I'm sure Becky versus Ronda is absolutely going to be the match for WrestleMania. I mean, if not, who the hell else is Ronda going to face? It's not going to be a Bianca or Rhea Ripley. It's going to be Becky Lynch. So I prefer if she doesn't win another women's Royal Rumble match in January. She can win an Elimination Chamber or something like that. That's fine. They can, get off to Becky versus Ronda since they're so obsessed with doing that matchup. But I just think for Bianca, throw whoever at her, honestly, over the next, couple weeks, couple months until Mania. I'm looking at the Raw Women's Division now. I mean, you could honestly, if they want to turn Alexa Bliss heel, which we were talking about in the prediction video, I think she definitely needs something, right now, because she's just plain Jane on television. It just really is not the Alexa Bliss of old, when everybody loved Alexa Bliss in 06, 2016, 17, and 18, when she was one of, if not arguably the top woman on Raw and SmackDown. So possibly if they want to finally pull the trigger on that, Bianca and Alexa can have a feud there. Hell, they could run Bianca versus Asuka. Those are two women that Bianca's been intertwined with on her side these last number of months. But now maybe that they finally got rid of the damage control problem because of War Games, they could run Bianca versus Asuka one-on-one. And they got her and Nikki Cross as well. There's a story to tell there. So Bianca's definitely got some opponents to kill some time, if you will, between now. There was rumors of them doing like a special Raw and a special SmackDown at the end of this year. It's kind of like New Year's episode, so maybe there'll be a championship match on there, the Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, and then we can get to WrestleMania and hopefully get the match that I think myself and a lot of other people out there believe is the ideal matchup for the Raw Women's Championship, and that is Bianca Belair versus Rhea Ripley. So that is my thoughts on all that. Women's War Games matchup was a thumbs up from me. Moving on with Survivor Series, we have AJ Styles versus Finn Balor. No surprise here. This was an awesome wrestling matchup. I haven't watched their 2017 match from TLC. Maybe since it happened, to be perfectly honest, so I can't really sit here and compare it to that one, since that's the only other one-on-one match they've ever had in WWE. It's been obviously 5 years since I saw that matchup, so I really don't have much recollection of what really happened. But obviously, we all know it was a kick-ass match, and so was this one. So Bob's just pointing out that I can't really compare him here. But AJ Styles, as I predicted, picks up the victory over Finn Balor. So I gotta assume this would really be the end of the OC versus the Judgment Day, unless they want to run another 6-man tag team match on Raw, which I'd be fine with. The Crown Jewel match was good. The Judgment Day stole the win there, but I don't know. I feel you're kind of handing somebody an unnecessary loss to overall end the feud when it's kind of already over. So I really don't feel the need to add another 6-man tag on Raw. But if they do it, that's fine. I'm sure it'd be a kick-ass matchup if they want to, conclude the feud, if you want to say that way. But where these guys go from here, I mean, AJ and the OC, I would love to see Anderson and Gallows possibly challenge for the Usos for the tag team titles. We'll talk about the Usos and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn later, but I'm sure they're going to defend the tag team titles at some point before WrestleMania, and I would love to see them run it back against Gallows and Anderson, since it's been quite some time. And if you're going to do that, you might possibly, if all those issues from a few years ago between AJ and Paul Heyman and Anderson Gallows, all that situation and backstage drama from a few years ago, if that's all squashed and everybody, wants to do good business, AJ Styles and Roman Reigns would be one hell of a matchup, whether that's at the Royal Rumble or whether that's on an episode of Raw, SmackDown, something like that. I would love to see that in the near future. We haven't gotten that matchup since the 2 matches in 2016. AJ's first year in the first 6 months in the WWE. Not that he's necessarily leaps and bounds better than he was then. I mean, he's always been phenomenal, no pun intended. But I would love to see that again, man. It's been a long time since we've gotten AJ and Roman. But if that's a stretch for AJ, then I don't know where we go with AJ, man. We have Austin Theory, obviously, which we'll talk about, holding the United States Championship here, or winning it back, I should say, at Survivor Series, which I think surprised a lot of people, surprised me. Obviously, the U.S. title is kind of the main title on Raw right now, and there's still unfinished business with, all of these guys, Theory, Lashley, Rollins, even Mustafa Ali. Where's Cody Rhodes going to play into that, possibly, at the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania? So I don't know what's going on with the U.S. title. Maybe AJ Styles can challenge for that on an episode of Raw or something like that, but that doesn't really seem like a big-time, long-lasting feud, especially now that we're preparing for WrestleMania season. And when it comes to even WrestleMania, like, thinking all those months later, like, I really don't know what's going to be in the plans for AJ. I mean, maybe it'll be some kind of 6-man tag of AJ and the OC versus, if they want to, finally reunite the Hurt Business, which a lot of people want. And Bobby Lashley, I'm pretty sure, has lobbied for, in interviews. And Lashley and AJ, their only one-on-one matchup they've ever had was only a few months ago on Monday Night Raw, so would definitely be a fresh pairing and would get Cedric back on TV and Shelton on TV. So that's a possibility. But besides that, man, I really don't know what's going to be in the cards for AJ Styles. Not that there's a lack of opponents, but there's just kind of a lot of people, when you really start thinking about who's going to be where at WrestleMania and into the Royal Rumble season, you kind of already pair certain names up with each other. And even if you don't have it figured out, you have this, all right, Edge, he might face Lesnar, or you might face this guy or that. Like, you kind of already got people, mixed together. I mean, the one big name on Monday Night Raw that's just been floating for, and just honestly doing the drop, I don't even know how to describe it, just been doing piss poor television with this man, Matt Riddle. I mean, he won that fight pit back at Extreme Rules against Seth Rollins, and then Seth Rollins went on to win the United States title 2 days later, and Matt Riddle's been doing this horrendous TV with Elias. I mean, not that it's bad TV to watch, but it's clearly not where Matt Riddle should be. So obviously Matt Riddle's a babyface, so they would have to maybe turn the OC heel, which would be fine. Might be a little soon for Gallows and Anderson to do that, but maybe we can get an AJ versus Riddle feud, possibly, honestly, for WrestleMania, with all the rumors of Randy Orton not coming back anytime soon. Maybe just AJ versus Riddle one-on-one for whatever story they want to write at WrestleMania. Could be a hell of a NXT takeover like match if they want to do that. But as for that, man, that's just a couple like random ideas for the OC and AJ for the next few months. And then when it comes to Finn Balor and the Judgment Day, like I was talking about in the prediction video, we obviously have unfinished business between Balor, Rhea Ripley, Beth Phoenix, and Edge. So I do think they gotta, conclude that part of this Judgment Day storyline, if you will. And who knows, man? They could, and I'm just kind of drifted off here, but if they could potentially, even though Judgment Day's been great, and ever since Triple H took over and they've become one of the best parts of Raw, which nobody thought they were going to be, but they legitimately are. Like, all four of them, man, they kill it every time. They're one of the best parts of Monday Night Raw now. But, Balor, they could blow it off. I'm sure it's going to be like a big mixed tag whenever they do it, whether it's on that end of the year Raw, or the first Raw of the year. They stretch it out to the Royal Rumble. Balor and Rhea Ripley versus, Edge and Beth Phoenix to finally conclude that feud. And then from there, like, you might potentially see the end of the Judgment Day, man. I don't, like, it's a great faction, and I do think there's still more to do with them, but I do believe Triple H might want to pull Finn Balor. There's just that part of me that feels like he might want to, bring back that NXT Finn Balor, maybe the Judgment Day continues on just without Finn, and maybe we get Damian Priest versus Finn Balor at WrestleMania or something like that. I don't know. I'm not saying that's the best idea in the world or necessarily what I would do. I'm just throwing out the possibility. But as for Finn Balor, man, and the Judgment Day, I think all eyes right now are just going to be on concluding that Edge and Beth Phoenix story. And then for Dominic, I'm sure we may be most likely looking at him and Rey Mysterio at WrestleMania, which hopefully isn't Rey's last match. I would like him to stretch it out to WrestleMania 40 so I can be there for his last match in Philadelphia, but I'm not getting my hopes up for that. And then, I already said what I would do with Rhea Ripley. So remains to be seen with what is going to happen with the Judgment Day. All right, next up we had Ronda Rousey and Shotzi for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Honestly, this match was like not bad. I thought it was better than I'd expected it, or not that I had low hopes for it or anything. But I honestly think Shotzi is great and has a lot of potential. Ronda Rousey, I guess she's all right, but like it's Ronda Rousey. Like, her matches are never going to be kick ass. But for what it was fine. They did a couple creative spots here. Shotzi was about to hit an awesome tornado DDT on the apron during this match, and Ronda just completely just sold it terribly and made it look like shit. But besides that, it was what you would expect. Ronda obviously retained, beat Shotzi. Don't see her losing that SmackDown Women's Championship until she, as we mentioned earlier, most likely and will probably fight Becky Lynch at WrestleMania, and Becky will win the SmackDown Women's Championship from Ronda, I would assume, unless Ronda wants her win back from Mania a few years ago. I don't know, but until we get there, I mean, when you look at the SmackDown Women's division, I'm sure they're going to do Ronda Rousey and Raquel Rodriguez, probably at the Royal Rumble, most likely. I believe they said last night, due to the attack on SmackDown, that Raquel would be out 4 to 6 weeks. The Royal Rumble is in 9 weeks, so I'm sure we're going to get Ronda versus Raquel at the Royal Rumble, which will be a big match for Raquel. I'm sure she'll shine in that, and hopefully maybe give Ronda a good match. Not that Raquel's some knockdown, drag out performer, but she definitely holds her own in there, and I think she's got a lot of potential. So we'll probably get that at the Royal Rumble. And then after that, it's Elimination Chamber. You don't even have to have Ronda on the show realistically. And that's probably what we're looking at. I mean, if Raquel's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, I don't know what Ronda's going to do till then. I mean, she could be off television 1 week, do a promo the next. It doesn't have to be too complicated. But maybe they'll honestly run like her and Shotzi again on SmackDown to escalate the situation between her and Raquel. That's a possibility. Or maybe they'll just throw somebody at her, like maybe she'll run it back with Liv Morgan or just somebody, or Natalia. They laid her ass out in the locker room a couple of weeks ago or over a month ago. I don't even remember when that was, but there's unfinished business there, I guess. So whatever happens with Ronda over the next couple weeks is basically probably just to kill time until they do Raquel and Ronda at the Rumble, and then all eyes will be on Ronda and Becky at WrestleMania. Enough said there. We'll move on to, I don't want to call it the match of the night because the War Games is War Games, but I mean, what a freaking triple threat matchup between Austin Theory, Bobby Lashley, Seth Rollins for the United States Championship. I mean, War Games, like I said, was War Games, and I'm talking about both War Games matches there, so like it's hard to compare what I enjoyed more, but like this was, and I would say definitely both War Games matches, but this was just a hell of a triple threat match, man. Seth Rollins in triple threat matches, he just knows how to put on a show. And Austin Theory looked great. Bobby Lashley looked like a beast. I mean, these guys tore down the house. A bunch of 6 spots, especially with all 3 of them involved near the end of the matchup. And as we talked about earlier, the honestly surprising finish of Austin Theory walking out with the United States Championship, man. I did not see Theory winning back the title. well, I don't want to say winning back the title. He hasn't held it since, the summer. What was it? When did he lose it to Lashley? Was it on Raw or was it at Money in the Bank? I don't even remember, but I guess it has been quite some time since he's held the gold. But Seth Rollins won the United States Championship early October, so not a super long reign with him. And just 2 weeks ago on Raw, Theory cashed in Money in the Bank, or 3 weeks ago, whatever it was, cashed in Money in the Bank and failed, which really set up this whole, kind of new attitude for Austin Theory and really set up the base for this triple threat matchup. But I'm real surprised to see Theory win back the title. I honestly, and I believe I talked about this the other day in my prediction video. If not, I apologize. But, my real big thought right now, where I'm leaning heavy, I guess you could say, in my WrestleMania card predictions is really Rock versus Roman for both championships. And then to me, I was like, well, if that's going to be the case, then I don't really see, they still have this unfinished business, which they teased last week between Rollins and Cody. It would be a more intriguing matchup, even though the match obviously will be sick, but we've seen it 3 times already, and it would be nice to be, for Cody to work somebody different at WrestleMania, preferably Roman if they weren't going to do him and Rock. But it just seemed like they were heading towards Cody versus Seth Rollins, and I honestly thought they were going to keep the United States Championship on the line during that matchup, considering it'd be the main championship on Monday Night Raw, and we probably won't have a world title on Raw until after WrestleMania, when maybe either Roman drops the WWE title or they just unify the WWE and Universal title and introduce some kind of new or reintroduce the big gold World Heavyweight Championships Raw. Whatever it is, I'm sure that's not going to happen until after WrestleMania. So I was just surprised that they took the title off of Seth Rollins, when it looks like they, were possibly heading towards Rollins versus Cody for the U.S. title at WrestleMania. And I mean, that's still probably where we're going, is Rollins versus Cody, unless, unless plans changed and Rock isn't going to be at WrestleMania and it's going to be Cody versus Roman for both belts. So they decide, and if Cody is ready to come back, so they decided to end Cody versus Rollins early, give the title back to Theory. They can run Rollins versus Cody, I'm just hypothetically speaking here, but at the Rumble or the Chamber or something, and then Rollins moves on to something else, and Cody moves on to Roman at Mania if he were, say, to win the Rumble. If, again, it wasn't going to be Roman versus Rock, and maybe that's why, and maybe, things are, getting sped up, or I don't know. All remains to be seen. But yeah, I think I was very surprised with Theory winning back the U.S. title. I think we're most likely still heading towards Cody versus Rollins at Mania, which, again, is going to be a great match. All 3 of their matches have been phenomenal, and there is unfinished business, so it would be nice to see that not just get dropped and then to tie up them loose ends. And to be perfectly honest, I would want them to blow it off in a big way, at WrestleMania, instead of it blowing off, to be honest, on the Monday Night Raw. I hated a few years ago when Edge came back from his injury when he in 2020 and came back in 2021, and they just blew off him and Randy Orton on Monday Night Raw, and they both just moved on. They should have dragged that back into WrestleMania that year and just concluded it in Hell in a Cell, instead of having Orton and Wyatt on the card and then Edge in the main event, which was great, but then losing. And to be honest, I would have had Ed win the title there, but it's fine. I just hated that they just blew off that big storyline, which was one of the best things of WWE in 2020 during the pandemic era for a little while. They just blew it off on a Monday Night Raw. I hated that. So I wouldn't want to see Cody versus Rollins go down that way. But I mean, if it was for the greater good, if you will, if it was because Cody was going to come back, win the Rumble, and face Roman at Mania, I guess, choose the lesser of 2 evils, and I think, you just do that. But remains to be seen. Cody versus Rollins, Roman versus Rock, most likely where we're heading. And then when it comes to Theory versus Lashley, I definitely don't want to see Lashley versus Lesnar dragged all the way to WrestleMania. I've been enjoying what they've been doing these last couple of months, but I think they should definitely just blow it off earlier than dragging this storyline from October all the way till April. I'd rather see Lashley versus Lesnar at the Royal Rumble, to be perfectly honest, and just do a big non-title match there for both guys, and then just have them both move into something fresh for WrestleMania. Especially, again, not to keep going back on the fact every time we talk, Royal Rumble and WrestleMania season, but Triple H, I'm sure, is holding some cards, close to the vest, and he's going to pull out some of his best work during WrestleMania season. So I'm sure he wants to go with more of a clean slate, even though this Lashley Lesnar this time around is, on his radar and is his story. But I prefer Lesnar and Lashley to be blown off at the Rumble And as for Brock Lesnar, I mean, we talked about the Edge idea, possibly Lesnar versus Edge for Edge's last WrestleMania match, potentially his last WrestleMania match. And besides that, there's also Lesnar versus Gunther, which would be one hell of a matchup. I don't see that being for an Intercontinental Championship if that's the case, because I just don't see I don't see Brock Lesnar contesting for the Intercontinental Gold. But I could be wrong. But to be perfectly honest, not that would be a hell of a matchup, because it obviously would. But I would like to see Gunther either face Sheamus at WrestleMania and we give Sheamus his Intercontinental Championship finally, or face Drew McIntyre at WrestleMania, we give McIntyre the Intercontinental Championship. That's what I prefer. Or if things work out in a certain way, then we do a big triple threat matchup between all three guys. But I think preferably the more ideal story would be Sheamus versus Gunther one-on-one. But I don't know, man. And then as for Bobby Lashley, once they conclude this this Lesnar feud, another guy where I really don't know where he fits right now outside of what he's been doing. I mean, there's unfinished business there with Theory and Rollins and Mustafa Ali. But once they tie up all these loose ends, which again, I think will be tied up by the Rumble, I don't know. You're looking at a clean slate for Bobby Lashley. I mean, he's kind of still a babyface, even though he's kind of been, toeing that line with everything he's been doing with beating up Ali and the stuff with Lesnar. I mean, the only thing I could see them really doing with him right now, if he isn't going to be contesting for United States Championship or dragging his feud with Lesnar all the way to Mania, would just be kind of pinning him against somebody and just having that one-on-one type feud, like I said about AJ and Riddle earlier. Maybe that's the return of Robert Roode, who is listed on the Monday Night Raw roster and has been out with an injury, I believe. So that would be, a hell of a matchup to see. And that's just like a BS idea, to be perfectly honest, just to throw something out there. I mean, I don't know. It's not like there isn't a talent to choose from, and they can, they made the switch between Baron Corbin and Rey Mysterio as a trade a couple months ago between SmackDown and Raw, even though the brand split's kind of loose right now anyway, which so really doesn't matter. But I don't know, maybe Lashley versus Karrion Kross, if they want to do some kind of big, matchup at Mania, Karrion Kross, unstoppable beast versus, Bobby Lashley, another unstoppable beast. I don't know. I just, besides the two things that Lashley has to finish up, I don't really see anything too major on the horizon for him. But remains to be seen, man. The triple threat match at Survivor Series was one hell of a fight. Anyway, the men's War Games matchup, the Bloodline, Roman Reigns, Sami Zayn, Solo Sikoa, and the Usos defeating Sheamus, Butch, Ridge Holland, Kevin Owens, and Drew McIntyre. What a freaking War Games matchup, man. I put it on Twitter today, and I'll say it again. Storytelling, my favorite thing about the old sport of professional wrestling, man. And I don't need to sit here and break down every single nuanced little moment that happened during this match that built up to the finish of Jey Uso and Sami Zayn hugging it out. Sami Zayn low blowing Kevin Owens, haluva kick, allows Jey Uso to hit the splash, the pin, Bloodline win. So Sami Zayn is like welcomed in as a member finally of the Bloodline, welcomed in by Jey Uso. It was just awesome, man. And it's honestly not what I saw going down. I felt we were gonna leave Survivor Series with the baby faces going over and more dissension between the Bloodline. But if anything, they're teasing that the Bloodline is stronger than ever. But I'm sure that is not going to be the case come, let's say, Royal Rumble. Because I think again I said in the prediction video, but the Usos versus Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, that is the tag title match for WrestleMania. Owens and Zayn, absolutely the team that should be dethroning the Usos, nobody else on the roster. My personal opinion. That's obviously the story to go with, and that is a WrestleMania-worthy match. But we have 9 weeks till the Rumble. Plenty of time for more dissension to get added between the Usos and Sami Zayn and the Bloodline. And I think, in my opinion, the way to go to really build up to a big moment and Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens reuniting is at some point. I would honestly do it like right before the Royal Rumble, like two weeks before the Rumble, or the final SmackDown before the Rumble. I would have the big blow up, and however they build up to it, to make sense. Where the Usos and Roman and Solo, but Roman especially, is just like, all right, enough of this, take him out. And the Usos and Solo just beat the living hell out of Sami Zayn, kick him out of the Bloodline, and just write him off TV for a couple of weeks until February at the Elimination Chamber in Montreal, in Canada, Sami Zayn country, where Sami Zayn would make some kind of return against maybe the Usos, who are having a tag team title match. Sami Zayn shows up after, or maybe it's Kevin Owens versus Solo Sikoa, or whatever the matchup is, where the Usos end up in the ring, and maybe again they're beating up on Kevin Owens, and Sami Zayn makes the big return in Montreal and sets up the tag title match for WrestleMania. That's what I would do, and that's I think just elevating the story even more. But realistically, I'm sure whatever they're going to do is going to be sick. But like as we've been talking about where these, all these guys are going into the rest of the year, into the Royal Rumble, into WrestleMania, Roman, it's either going to be The Rock, which obviously is the big match. I mean, this is just the year to do it. I really don't need to sell anybody on that. It's got to happen eventually. People have been clamoring for it for years. Roman's at the top of his game. The Rock, as great shape as he is in, ain't getting any younger. It's WrestleMania in Los Angeles, in Hollywood. You can't write the better scenario. It's got to be the year Roman versus Rock at Mania. And if for some reason that doesn't happen and Rock can't do it, then obviously Roman versus Cody, or potentially even Roman versus Bray Wyatt would probably be the way to go at WrestleMania. But obviously I think top priority for WWE is going to be finally accomplishing Roman Reigns at the top of his game versus The Rock one-on-one at Mania. Usos, as we mentioned, Usos, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, tag title match for Mania, simple as that. As for Solo Sikoa, I mean, he really doesn't need to be in anything major these next few months. Just hanging around the bloodline, doing his thing is going to be fine with him. And like I said, maybe if they bring back the Money in the Bank at WrestleMania, he can be a participant in that. Or if they don't and they keep around these pointless Andre the Giant and women's WrestleMania Battle Royal, and maybe he can win that, or maybe Triple H will actually make it something important. I don't know, but he really doesn't need to be involved in anything major. And then as for the baby faces who came up short here, I think you still got a matchup between Roman Reigns and Sheamus you got to do. If you don't do, Roman versus KO again, and you don't do Roman versus McIntyre again, which I would be fine with not seeing those matches again. He already beat those guys. You don't need to run it back when we know they're not going to win. And obviously we know Sheamus ain't taking the titles off Roman either, but at least it'd be a fresh match, a new name for Roman to face, and no pun intended, but Sheamus literally does put on bangers after bangers. So putting Sheamus versus Roman at the Royal Rumble, I think would be ideal as a big match for Roman on that show, and a match we haven't seen before. So I think hopefully they build up towards that, and then wherever Sheamus goes at WrestleMania, whether that's facing Gunther or whatever else, they can start that story post Royal Rumble when you got all February and all March to build WrestleMania. And Ridge Holland, and Butch, they already faced the Usos multiple times, came up short. Not really sure what they're going to be doing, but they could just be floating on SmackDown doing their thing. They'll be fine. Drew McIntyre, Kevin Owens will be involved with Usos and Sami Zayn, so we really need to talk about him. As for Drew McIntyre, man, like I said earlier, I think it's either him and Gunther at WrestleMania, which Gunther has a lot of possible opponents. I mean, him and Sheamus, him and McIntyre, him and Lesnar, him and Cena. Gunther, in most likely an Intercontinental Championship match, is going to be in something big come WrestleMania. But for Drew McIntyre, man, I really don't know where he falls right now, and I really don't want to see McIntyre end up in a feud with a Braun Strowman or something like that, and just like a pointless kind of one-on-one feud, because he's done that so recently, man. Him and Corbin last year at Mania was so pointless, and that he spent basically all of 2021, a bunch of 2022, really up until they started building up to him and Roman, just in these pointless feuds that really are just a waste of McIntyre's time, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he's one of, if the top guy, he's obviously not the top guy, but he's one of the top faces of the company, man. So I really don't know where McIntyre goes from here. There's obviously names on SmackDown he can face, in, I don't want to say the lead up to anything, but, I'm sure he'll be in the Royal Rumble. You got him versus, I'm just throwing out names regardless of babyface or heel status, but you got names on SmackDown: Braun Strowman, Bray Wyatt, LA Knight. He already ran him versus Karrion Kross. I don't know where McIntyre's going to fall, man. Maybe they're going to run him and Solo Sikoa one-on-one, just to kind of conclude maybe their little story, but I really don't see a big, if it happens, cool, but it's not like a top priority. And then, I don't know, let me check out the Raw roster while we're looking at things, man. I mean, again, not really nothing too major stretching out. I mean, if they wanted to do something big, honestly, and Edge doesn't say face Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania, you can write Edge versus Drew McIntyre, man. I think that'd be a hell of a matchup. That's a match that I would have loved to see a few years ago, when Edge, in 2020 and 2021, when McIntyre was WWE champion and Edge was working more Raw. Well, he's on Raw now, but was participating more in championship programs. I would have loved to see it then. But hell, maybe for Edge's last WrestleMania, potentially Edge's last WrestleMania. It's not confirmed that he will retire next summer, possibly in Toronto, but that is the rumored thing that he said himself. So for Edge's potentially last WrestleMania, if they're not going to run him versus Brock Lesnar, which is a highly sought after match for a lot of people, because they've touched in 02, maybe 03, but they really haven't fought, basically ever in their careers. And, Brock Lesnar's so young then. It'd obviously be a completely different match now. I don't know how Edge taking a bunch of German suplexes and F5s is going to do for him, but I mean, obviously he's been at this for over 2 years again, so I'm sure he wouldn't take the match if he couldn't take it. But if they don't do him and Lesnar at WrestleMania, maybe him versus Drew McIntyre. Maybe that's a match they can set up in the Royal Rumble where McIntyre's just doing everything he can to just finally get back to another match with Roman Reigns, and he's just like, I gotta do it. Maybe Edge is in the Rumble and Edge eliminates McIntyre, and it's one of those, Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels like setups where the guy who got eliminated just snaps. McIntyre can run back in, beat the hell out of Edge, and maybe we slowly turn into a Drew McIntyre heel turn or something like that. And hey, maybe they do that. Maybe they pull the trigger. And I know McIntyre's one of the top, baby faces of the company, but I mean, not for nothing, but Roman Reigns, even though he's technically a heel, like he's just one of those. There's so many guys that are just so popular. Roman, Rollins, hell, even Lashley lately. Like there's some of these guys are just so popular that you can write them in whatever story you want. Be a good guy, be a bad guy, and it works. So if McIntyre, even though he's one of your top baby faces in the company, you could turn him heel if you wanted to. Fight Edge at WrestleMania, have a big match there. Edge's potential last WrestleMania, and then hell, maybe if Sheamus fights Gunther at WrestleMania for the Intercontinental Championship and wins the title, maybe they can build towards McIntyre versus Sheamus for the Intercontinental title at next year's Clash of the Castle if they do one, which would be huge. And then maybe McIntyre can end the run of Sheamus for the IC title and have a real just story from one Clash of the Castle to the next, which I think would be huge. I just wrote the next year for the Intercontinental Championship, dude. I mean, come on, that's just throwing out ideas. But overall, for Survivor Series, man, my personal most enjoyed Survivor Series since I don't even know when, man. Like 2016 was like a good show from what I don't even remember. It was the one match between the men's Raw versus SmackDown match that was like an hour that was great. But besides that, it was the Goldberg Lesnar squash, which was what it was. I don't even know, dude. I might not have enjoyed Survivor Series this much since like live watching it on pay-per-view since I don't know, maybe we're going back to years that were into my childhood, so it really didn't even matter what happened on those Survivor Series. I was going to enjoy them anyway, so I don't even know, man. Definitely, I'll just say the best Survivor Series in a decade, at least for my personal most enjoyed event. 2002, the legendary Survivor Series, in my opinion, a lot of other people's opinions, one of the best Survivor Series pay-per-views of all time. I don't know where this one falls. I'm sure some people may say that's an overrating, but I'm going to say it's probably in the top like 6, top 5. And if we keep going with War Games, more and more at Survivor Series, which I think is the right idea, it just fits, then I'm sure the Survivor Series is going to become better and better and become, back to being one of the biggest pay-per-views of the year and actually feeling like that again, especially if they get rid of Money in the Bank next year, put it back at WrestleMania, which I think is the best case scenario. Screw those pointless battle royals that help no one. Let's get a women's Money in the Bank ladder match on Saturday night, a men's Money in the Bank ladder match on Sunday night, and then come June or July, you do back-to-back night pay-per-views, or one night's a Queen of the Ring and one night's a King of the Ring. That's what I would do personally. And then, like I said, hopefully next year we keep going with this with the War Games at Survivor Series. It just fits the idea, and it just makes for a great event, a great match, and I don't think it's the same feeling as forcing like a Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. Matches like that should be saved to, blow off that big feud, as people have said for years. But just like how NXT had War Games, in that November slot, the night before Survivor Series, every year for, 3-4 years, and it just fit. They always, made it make sense every year. It didn't feel forced. Like, oh, War Games coming up, we got to force a War Games match. Like every year it felt very organic, and I'm sure with Triple H, running the show, he would do the same thing next year, whatever those teams may be. But hopefully it keeps going at Survivor Series. I think it's just the way to go. And overall, I freaking love this show. So I thought it was a great night, and honestly an easy watch. Went by fast. Only 5 matches, with obviously 2 of them taking up basically 40 minutes each, or basically an hour each between entrances and post-match and all that stuff. But it was an easy to watch show. I really enjoyed it, and I'm pumped up, man, about where we're headed next. 9 weeks till the Royal Rumble. Hoping Monday Night Raw steps it up, because the Raw has not been the most entertaining show. It's just it's not a bad show. It's just like stuff just happens, and it's just like, okay, and it's kind of boring. I don't know. SmackDown's been great. We got Ricochet and Santos Escobar next week. I think Triple H has been watching the Universe Mode episodes over on the other YouTube channel, because we ran Ricochet and Santos Escobar months ago. But now I'm pumped up for that on SmackDown. Hopefully Raw steps it up now that we're heading towards the Rumble, and soon going to be heading towards the road to WrestleMania. But leave your thoughts on Survivor Series down below in the comments, and let me know where some of the main programs for WWE, where you want to see them head into the end of the year and into next year and into Royal Rumble and WrestleMania season. So thanks for checking out this video, guys, and I'll see you guys later this week for something else. I don't know what it's going to be, but we'll be back on the channel later this week. All right, see you guys.